Welcome on back, everyone, to the college football show here on Beef Up Front. Ryan Coyle joined alongside Joe Kmetz. A scheduling snafu last week, I think we could call it, prevented us from getting together for a week one slate, but we'll be here the rest of the way, going out, previewing, as always, the five biggest games of the week, and then the biggest G5 game of the week as well. Got a really good one on Friday night. Looking forward to breaking down. Then we'll get into our dog of the day, our lock of the week, and just talk everything college football. Try to keep it 30 to 40 minutes, give you your picks and our opinions on these big games. But Joe, welcome back. Just were telling me about your high school football coaching journey that you just begun. So football is in the air. We got NFL this week too. How are we?
I'm great, Coyle. I mean, yeah, that last week definitely was tough with, like getting used to oh, I actually have to go to practice after work and that's why I like it. Practices, fantasy drafts, it was just tough to schedule last week. We'll be good the rest of the way. But it was fun. It's definitely cool being on the other side of things, coaching football. But I'm doing well. Shout out Derby High School in Derby, Connecticut. All of the coaches have been riding, lock of the week in our week zero show I gave them what my lock would have been for week one, which was Tulane. They wrote them both. They're really tuning in to see what my lock is going to be for this week. And they literally have it up on the board in the coach's office in the corner, like my lock of the week. So a lot of pressure because everyone's expecting me to pick another winner. But I'm excited to get going. We had week two, great week one. A lot of action happened. Bama might be dead. The dynasty might officially be over. Notre Dame lost Miami. Miami looked really good. Carson Beck looks like he's back to what he was 2 seasons ago. Arch Manning did not look great, but Coyle, I saw, I was on Twitter earlier and I saw what you said. My take is because for those who might not know what I'm talking about, Coyle was talking about a lot of these big name teams maybe shouldn't open up the season against these big name opponents. I know it would suck from a viewership side of things, but from a fan base perspective, think about it. Like you said, USC beat Missouri State 73 to 10, whatever the whole score was. And, they're like, oh man, we look great. We're going to, compete for a national title. Meanwhile, the sky is falling. Barstool, Texas is tweeting out, miss you, babe. And it's a picture of Quinn Ewers, who they couldn't wait to get rid of. And now, it's two different sides of the coin. I almost think week zero should be a full slate, but you get all your garbage games out then. And then Labor Day is still the premier weekend of hey, holiday weekend, let's load up on these big games. You want to do them at neutral sites? I don't like that, but fine. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Week two, not as good of a slate as week one, but that's kind of how it's always been. But I'm still got a lot of quality games that we're gonna get to, and I'm excited to get to them.
Yeah, I tweeted out earlier. I tweeted a couple of weeks ago my complete 12-team playoff field for this upcoming season. 6 of those teams lost in either week one or week zero. And, in the past, in the 4-team playoff era, those team seasons are done. But, I have Texas in there. Obviously, they still have a great chance. I have Notre Dame in there. They still have a great chance. Clemson, they still have a great chance. Alabama, I'm not going to say a great chance just because they concerned me that much last week, but still obviously alive. Kansas State has a decent chance, but they're looking like they're probably going to struggle a little bit this year. And then Boise State, they're probably dead as the G5 representative. But a bunch of those teams still have life. So, scheduling those tough week one or week zero games, sure, it can hurt you right now, but over the course of the season, it might be better. But I still think it's kind of a better approach, especially if you're playing in the Big Ten, you're playing in the SEC. Look at Penn State's schedule. They basically have 3 preseason games. They have Nevada last week, they have FIU this week, and then next week they have Villanova before they go on a bye, and then they host Oregon. Basically your 3 NFL preseason games before you get into the regular season. And I think that's kind of the smart approach. I think we're going to see it more and more going forward. It's kind of upsetting from a viewership perspective, but if your fan base, you want your team to win, you want your team to be kind of in the best spot. So you got to pick and choose your spots there. But we play such a loaded conference schedules with these mega conferences now that there's no real point, I think, of scheduling these tough out of conference games. So we'll see, obviously, as the years go on. But let's get into the week 2 slate, the full slate. As always, our 5 best matchups of the week. Not nearly as great of big time matchups, but when you look kind of depth wise, there's a handful of good matchups. So that we're not even going to get into that didn't make the cut, that are going to be really solid games, I think, on Saturday afternoon. So we actually start on Friday night, though, this week with our G5 game of the week. James Madison, they are in the Sun Belt. They have a chance to be one of those G5 teams in the mix for the playoff spot. They'll be traveling to Louisville, a team I think that we're both pretty high on this year. They had a pretty convincing week 1 win as well. Louisville comes into this one as a 14.5 point favorite, over under 57.5. Joe, could JMU pull off the upset, you think?
I don't think they'll be able to pull off the upset because Coyle, like you said, I think Louisville's going to be pretty good this year. They're going to be one of those fringe, like competing to make the ACC championship game teams. I don't think they'll be good enough to make the playoffs on their own, obviously, but who knows? If you win, your conference, you're in. James Madison, I totally forgot, got Sluka from UNLV. That was a surprise. I was looking for like the week 1 scores and stuff, and I saw his name. I'm like, oh my God. But I think JMU's going to definitely keep it within the number. I have Louisville winning this game 42-31. So I'll take JMU plus the 14.5. I'm going to go with the over 57.5. I really like the over on Friday night.
Yeah, it's a James Madison team, one of, if not the favorite to win this Sun Belt Conference. So getting 2 touchdowns here, to play with. I think that they can make this interesting. Louisville, I think, is going to be a really solid squad. I'm really high on Miller Moss at the quarterback spot under Jeff Brom. I'm really high on Isaac Brown, the running back. I think Louisville is definitely a dark horse team to watch in the ACC. So a perfect game to tune in and watch these guys on Friday night. I think it's either at 7 or 8 o'clock or something. I'm going to be competing with the Chiefs and the Chargers, but if you're a 2 TV watcher, definitely put this Louisville game on. I think they're a team to watch this year. Keep an eye out as that sleeper team in the ACC potentially. But JMU in their own right is a solid squad. I think 2 touchdowns is too much, so I'm going to take JMU to cover that one. Also going to ride with the over in this spot. I think 38-27, probably my final prediction on this game. Louisville, I think, is going to be a really explosive offense, though, and I think this one we could see a lot of points. So give me Louisville to win, but I'll take JMU to cover like you. All right, let's go over to Saturday now, a basketball matchup here in most years, and this past year I think it was Duke absolutely rolled Illinois, but this time we might have roles reversed. 11 Illinois at 1-0, traveling to Duke, who's also 1-0. Both teams coming off very convincing wins. Illinois over Western Illinois, I believe it was, and Duke over Elon. Illinois is a 2.5 point favorite here as the number 11 team in the country. Some people are calling this a trap game. Over under is 50.5. Joe, do you think Duke can pull off that outright upset at home?
I don't think so. I mean, I know Darien Mens had a great second half. They came out really slow against Elon. That game was tied at the half. I know if you just looked at the final score, you're like, oh, Duke really didn't have any problems. It was definitely a tough start, but this seems like a game to kind of relate it to college basketball, Coyle. This is like the 12-5 game that everyone's calling. I feel like I've been seeing it all over social media since the preseason. Oh, Duke over Illinois is the most obvious top 25 upset of the season. And if it is, good for these people for predicting it, but I'm going to go with Illinois. I really like Illinois. I think they're going to make the playoff this year. I think they're this year's Indiana. All the experience that they're bringing back. You got Altmaier there at quarterback. I think they're going to get it done. I think it's going to be a close game. I have in Illinois winning this game 27-21. So I'll take a minus 2.5. I'm going to go under 50.5 because Duke, this is you're playing a top 15 team in the country. If you come out slow, especially against a Brett Bielema-led team that's going to kind of grind you down and almost make you lose your will to play the game, you're going to have a lot of trouble coming back in the second half, even if you are at home. So I'm going to go with Illinois here to win 27-21.
Yeah, this Duke-Illinois matchup, I think, features like a great next tier of quarterbacks. When we've been talking all offseason about the top quarterbacks on the sport, you hear the name Kate Klubnik, Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller. Then I think there's a little bit of a drop-off to this next group. I think these 2 quarterbacks, Luke Altmaier and Darien Mens, slide in there. And I think by the end of the year, if Duke has the type of year that I think that they could, which is like a 9-3 season, I think Darien Mens is going to play himself into potentially that upper echelon in college football of the quarterback spot. So a great chance for these 2 to showcase themselves at noon, Altmaier and Darien Mensah. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of NFL scouts at this one checking out both of these quarterbacks. But with all that being said, I really like Illinois to go on the road and win this one. One of the most experienced teams in all of college football. Altmaier, one of the more experienced quarterbacks in college football that we touched on. And Duke, while I think is going to be a strong squad this year, I think Illinois is just a little bit of a echelon above, a class above at this moment. But I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game and a battle. I'm going to go 24-20 Illinois, so I'll go Illinois minus 2.5, under 50.5. But watch out for these two quarterbacks. It really could be a situation whoever gets the ball last wins this one, because both of these guys kind of have that clutch gene to them. So really looking forward to that one. I think that has a chance to be the best game of the day on Saturday. All right, another game at noon, weird kickoff time or weird television network, but we get Baylor traveling to number 17 SMU, 12 o'clock on the CW network. SMU is a 3.5-point favorite, over under 65.5, one of the highest totals, if not the highest total in the entire sport this week. We should expect some fireworks, I think, in this one. Joe, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm going Baylor here to pull off the upset. I had Baylor beating Auburn last week. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. Shout out Auburn. They looked way better than I thought they were going to look. But I think this is an experienced Baylor team. People were talking about them to sneak into the Big 12 title game, maybe even sneak into the playoff. And you have a team like this that you kind of got embarrassed at home against a team a lot of people thought you were going to beat. Even though you were underdogs, you still got kind of smushed by this Auburn team, and you get a chance to go on the road, in-state battle. I'm not going to necessarily call the SMU Baylor game a rivalry. It's not the old SWC days. But I think this is a really big game, big opportunity for Baylor. You win this game, you put your season right back on track. If you lose, I know both games were non-conference games, so I know it's not going to affect them in the Big 12 standings. But it's going to be a real tough start for Baylor and their fans if they start 0-2 when these are two very winnable games. And SMU, I didn't really watch their game against the East Texas A&M Lions. I did bet them the cover, and they didn't come close. I had SMU minus the 50.5. And they only won 42-13, but I didn't really learn a whole lot about them for playing a team that I think was a Division II team like 3 years ago. Kevin Jennings looked fine, looking at the stats and stuff, but I'm going to go with SMU losing at home here. I'm going with the under. I think 65.5 is a lot of points. I have 31-24. I think it'll be a little bit higher scoring than that. I think 65.5 is a lot of points. I hope I'm wrong. I had a bunch of overs last weekend, and that did not go well. So I'm going to go with Baylor here to pull off the upset on the road here against a ranked SMU team, 31-24.
I'm going to go with Baylor too, Joe, to pull off the outright upset in this one. I think this is a huge game for them. They were a team that had a lot of hype this offseason. Sawyer Robertson was really hyped up, and he looked pretty good week one. I think that loss week one against Auburn was definitely on the defense. But this is a team that has playoff expectations, and you said it yourself that even if you lose both these games, you're still alive in the Big 12. But if you lose both these games, you probably eliminate any chance that you might have of getting that wild card spot or that at-large spot out of the Big 12 potential. You'd have to go in and win the conference. So this is a huge game for them. A lot of emphasis, in-state kind of matchup rivalry here. I think Baylor's going to go out and pull off the upset here. Plus 3.5, I like for sure. I really like the over 65.5. I think Sawyer Robertson, Kevin Jennings, these two guys go back and forth. This reminds me of 3 or 4 years ago, SMU played TCU, and I think the final score was like 63-60, somewhere like that. At one point, the live total was like up to like 130 points. I think we're really going to see these two teams both air it out and be one of the funner games of the weekend. But give me Baylor 38-35, getting that road upset here. Baylor plus 3.5, over 65.5 there. Now we go to a game that's probably the complete opposite. We go to Nick McClay's Super Bowl here with Iowa at number 16, Iowa State for a noon kick on Fox. Iowa State minus 2.5 to over under only 41.5 compared to the 65.5 that we just broke down.
I'm going with Iowa State here, 28-20. I think the over is going to hit. I'm going to take the Cyclones minus 2.5. Rocco Becht is a dog. I mean, I was on Kansas State in week 0. I was wrong. That was a great win for the Cyclones. They just smashed South Dakota, which is not a bad FCS program. I know it's an FCS school, but they did what they were supposed to do, especially coming back from Ireland, where meanwhile Kansas State, which, Coyle, you kind of tweeted about it, and I was talking to you about it a little bit, could quickly turn into the dumpster fire after their running back transferred after the week 0 loss. You have Avery Johnson's dad and brother fighting in the crowd. Meanwhile, Iowa State came back, handled business in a very much what should have been a trap game. You have your two biggest rivals in the first 3 weeks, really 2 weeks of the season. Obviously, week 0 not being week 1. you have all your biggest rivalry games before you get to, midway in September. This is a massive game for Iowa State at home. I think they're going to win it. I like the over here, just because Iowa. I don't think it's the same old Iowa. I know it's Albany. They put up 34 points. I really like the Gronkowski kid out of South Dakota State. I think they're going to do enough to get 41 and a half. If that's what you're setting the over at, I'll definitely take it there. Maybe get a good special teams play. And I'm going to go with the Cyclones here 3-0. And if Iowa State does end up winning this game, we might have to talk about a potential two-bid Big 12. I feel like we're talking about college basketball again.
Hmm.
But because after this, they have at Arkansas State, which is weird. But then they avoid Utah. They host Arizona State in the Big 12. And then they have a tough one later in the year at TCU. But this could be setting up, if they were to win this game, for Iowa State to have a very, very special season out there in Ames.
Yeah, Iowa State has impressed, and like you said last week, should have been like a trap spot, and they went and really took care of business, even coming back from Ireland. So, hats off to them. As I touched on at the beginning of that SMU, or the beginning of this, referring to the SMU Baylor game, expect this one to really be the complete opposite. You always get something weird in this game, whether it's both teams making 4 or 5 field goals, or a punt return for a touchdown, a safety, something like that. Something funky is going to happen in this one. It always does. Iowa State last year had a pretty crazy comeback in this game. This is a game that I feel like you always blindly bet the under. I know you're on the over in this one, but I think this is one that just every single year you probably take the under, and you're making out more times than not, especially with Iowa. Iowa State might have something else to say about that. But I am interested to see this one and see if Gronkowski can look a little bit better than he did last week. He kind of struggled last week, but I also think they were keeping things pretty vanilla, not really trying to show much, to put much on film with him to let Iowa State see it this week. So I do like Iowa State to win at home, but very fascinated to watch both these teams, because I do think if that Iowa offense can elevate this year. I feel like we say this every single year, but if that Iowa offense elevates this year, they could actually be, in the mix for competing kind of at the top there of the Big 12, instead of just going, or Big 10, not just going 8-4 or 9-3, maybe even winning like double-digit games, being a 10-win team potentially, if that offense can be a little bit better, because that defense is always going to be good. So a big test for both spots in this one, but circumstances like this where I think both teams are pretty even, coin flip type game, I tend to lean to the home team. So I'm going to go Iowa State 21-17, Iowa State -2.5, and we will go under 41.5. All right, we got a revenge game here. Number 20, Ole Miss at Kentucky, a 3:30 kick on ABC. As we know, last year, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. They also lost to Florida down the stretch, but they win either of those games, they're most likely in the playoff for a team that everyone had going to the playoff last year. So this is a revenge spot, I think, for Lane Kiffin against a Kentucky team that struggled with Toledo. They still took care of business and won. Toledo wound up covering that game, but a Kentucky team I'm really low on. Interested to hear your thoughts on this game. Ole Miss 9.5-point favorite, over under 52.5, 3:30 kick on ABC.
Yeah, Coyle, I'm with you. I think Kentucky is kind of a dead team walking. I think Mark Stoops is kind of done there as a coach. They were talking about a little bit on Pardon My Take, but it's true. When he has to constantly repeat how he's the most motivated guy in the world, and how, it's going to be better this year. They have Zach Calzada starting at quarterback, which is not very inspiring for me. He went 10 for 23 with a pick against the Toledo Rockets, who I think are going to be a very good team in the MAC this year. Don't get me wrong. I actually picked them to win outright. I also had them, to cover last week, which that was good. But I really don't think this is a very inspired Kentucky team. I think Ole Miss is going to use last year's loss as revenge fuel. I think they're going to smoke Kentucky. I got the game going 49-17. I have Ole Miss -9.5, and I think they might almost hit the over by themselves. I think Ole Miss is going to dominate this team. Excuse me, and I'm going to go with the Rebels here, big time, against Kentucky. And this is a team that will be looking for a new coach by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think we see Ole Miss and Lane kind of keep their foot on the gas the entire time in this one. I'm really excited because I didn't get to watch them last week. I forget who they even played. It was some no-name team, but I really want to see Austin Simmons kind of play a full game. And I think we'll be able to do that Saturday afternoon at 3:30. This week, as I said, not the most exciting slate, so I kind of want to lock in on this one and kind of just check him out, because I think what we saw in that flash from him against Georgia last year, if he can put that all together this season, I think Ole Miss is even a player in the SEC. So all eyes on Ole Miss in this one. I agree with you, too. I think that they win and cover. Interested to see how their defense looks. We know that offense is going to be really good. but I do like them to be able to win this one pretty comfortably. I got them winning by 2 touchdowns, 35-21. Let's go Ole Miss minus 9.5 over 52.5, but kind of a scouting or evaluation game for Austin Simmons at Ole Miss for me. I think this might be the last Kentucky football game I'm going to watch from start to finish this year because I agree with you, Joe. We shouldn't have to watch Zach Calzada play college football anymore. It's one of those guys, like, why the hell is he getting another chance at a Power 5 level? All right, final game of the night, the game of the weekend, I guess, on the calendar, schedule-wise, two of the premier blue blood programs in all of college football. Number 15, Michigan, at number 18, Oklahoma. Both teams coming off big wins in week one over very mediocre opponents. Oklahoma beating Illinois State, Michigan beating New Mexico. So they both get their first test here. But I love that. I love how they both got to go out there, test some things out. Both had new quarterbacks. Those guys get to get some reps in with their new offensive lines, with their pass catchers, with their running backs. Defense gets to go out and work out some things. And now you got a big-time matchup here, week two. No excuses, I think. This is your 7:30 primetime game on ABC. Oklahoma's a 5.5-point favorite, over under 45.5. Joe, can Oklahoma protect home turf in this one?
Yes, I think they do. I like John Mateer. I'm going to go with Oklahoma 28, Michigan 20. I also am not really sold on Sharon Moore as a coach. I don't think he's that great. He has that 2-game suspension coming up. It also kind of feels like they're going to use him as the scapegoat at the end of the season. I feel like they're going to find a way to fire him. They're going to be like, hey, you brought all this onto the university. Oklahoma took care of business with their FCS school. Michigan took care of New Mexico. I am really excited because I didn't watch a whole lot of that game. I'm excited to see Bryce Underwood, first big start going on the road. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma here to win 28-20. I'm going to go Oklahoma minus the 5.5. I really love the over in this game. I think 45.5 is a little low. I think we'll get there. It'll be a little bit of a sweat, but I think we'll end up getting there at the end. And so I like the over 45.5 as well.
This game reminds me a lot of the first game we talked, or the first Saturday game we talked about with Duke and Illinois, where you had all these quarterbacks getting talked about all offseason. I think these guys kind of fall into that next category. Bryce Underwood, obviously the number one quarterback recruit from this past recruiting cycle, and then John Mateer was one of the top transfers, but they still weren't lumped into that upper echelon. Mateer, I think, showed some really good flashes. Bryce Underwood obviously showed some good flashes. Which quarterback kind of plays better, I think, ultimately determines this one. And I'm going to lean towards Oklahoma just because I think it's a more experienced squad, a quarterback that's seen a little bit more during his time at Washington State. Bryce Underwood, this is his first major test. What is he going to look like against a really good Oklahoma defense? Say what you want about Oklahoma, about Brent Venables, but even last year when they were struggling, that defense still came to play every week, and it was a really good unit. It's a really experienced unit. And they're really good in the middle. And I think when you have a good kind of middle of the field, you're able to kind of confuse some of these young quarterbacks. So look for the linebacker play at Oklahoma to potentially be the difference in this one. But I also think it's a pretty good defensive battle between two, what I would consider probably top 10 to 15 defenses in all of college football. Could come down to who has the ball last, but I'm going to roll with the home team here. 5.5 is pretty decent amount of points. Even being at home, this game opened at 2.5, but it's steamed up to that 5.5, but I do like the under in this one. I think we see both defenses come to play. Give me Oklahoma 24-17. So Oklahoma minus 5.5, under 45.5. All right, last two picks of the week, our dog of the day, which is our favorite underdog of the week, and then our lock of the week, as Joe talked about. It has gotten off to a good start this year, and the pressure will be on for his third one. So Joe, dog of the day, we'll start there. I'll go first. I'm going to go with one of the teams that I thought was the most impressive last week out of any as my dog of the day. That's the South Florida Bulls plus 17.5. Had them plus 5.5 last week against Boise State. They wound up winning that game outright. Byron Brown was one of the more electric players we watched in all of week one, was just running guys over, and he didn't even have to do it half the time. He was just kind of doing it because he could, but he can run, he can throw. He's a very exciting quarterback, and that USF team has some real test here early in the season. If they kind of sneak off one of these upsets, take care of business in the American, they could definitely be your group of five representative at the college football playoff this year. So look for South Florida to make some noise. They're playing Florida this week. I think they can keep it within that 17.5.
My dog of the day, I'm picking a money line winner. I'm going with Mississippi State plus 200. They are hosting Arizona State. I'm calling my shot. I think that's going to be the upset of the weekend. Arizona State, I think they're a good team. I think they're going to have a great year. I love Sam Leavitt. I think he's a great quarterback. I just think having to go on the road a Mississippi State team that's coming off a terrible year last year. You know, pretty solid win on the road at a G5 program that it was like their Super Bowl sellout crowd. Southern Miss was hosting Mississippi State, a big in-state game. They ended up taking care of business, winning 34-17. You're coming home now. You're gonna have the cowbells. Right now, it's +6.5 at -105 over on DraftKings. I'm hoping it ticks up to the 7.5 to worst case scenario. I think it's gonna be within a touchdown, but I'm gonna call my shot and go with Mississippi State +200, my dog of the day.
All right, and time for our lock of the week now. My lock of the week, nothing really was popping off the page to me like, wow, I got to have that this week. So I went with a game that I think a lot of people are going to be watching. I think is going to be a fun one. I think we see an offensive kind of showcase in this one. Kansas versus Missouri, rivalry game here, over 50.5. I would take as my lock of the week. Bo Perbula, I know they only played Central Arkansas, but he looked awesome last week, and I'm really excited to see him get a full season as a starter here at Missouri. He played behind Drew Aller, and they would put him in spurts. He played a little bit when Aller was banged up, but he's an electric quarterback, has got some wheels. I'm excited to watch him for a full year this year. And then Jalen Daniels, they looked really good in week 0 against Fresno State. They looked good again last week. So I'm excited to see Jalen Daniels and Bo Perbula kind of duel it out here in this rivalry game. I think we could see some fireworks, like a 35-31 type of game. So give me Kansas, Missouri over 50.5 as my lock of the week.
Cool. I'm kind of with you. Looking through the slate, I didn't find anything that was really jumping off the page. One thing I did see was Texas Tech is hosting Kent State
Red
at 12
Raiders.
o'clock on Saturday. Red Raiders, yes. Texas Tech, I bet them last week to cover. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think it was like 55.5 points. They ended up covering with a second half that was delayed with an end of the world rainstorm. I don't know if you saw that picture of that thunderstorm that was coming into Texas Tech. So it was running clock in the second half and 8-minute quarters, and they were still able to cover. I don't care who it's against. That's impressive with that many points. I also think Kent State is the worst team in the FBS this year. They needed a kick return from Darius Clark, awesome name by the way, to beat Merrimack, which is a team up in Massachusetts, my neck of the woods, which is a very middle of the road to maybe even below average FCS school. That being said, Kent State going on the road, their first of many power conference road games that they have. But I'm going to go with Texas Tech. I got them at -47.5. I think they'll cover that number. I think they'll win by like 49 to 52 points. I don't think it's going to be like a 70-0 type game, but I think they'll be able to cover. I think Kent State is just the upgrade in talent from Merrimack to Texas Tech, a team who got a lot of guys out of the portal, a team who expects to contend in the Big 12. And right now, honestly, you could argue like them, Utah, based off of, our 1 week of work so far, might be favorites to win the Big 12. But that's going to be my lock of the week.
Yeah, let's not forget last year Tennessee and Kent State played, and Tennessee won and beat them 71-0. I think the live line at one point was like 79.5. So Kent State, not very good, and Texas Tech too, a team that has got all this money, has got all this talent. I think they're a team that's going to really kind of look to run up these scores at the beginning of this season and really kind of get their name out there a little bit more. So looking for Texas Tech to have a big one on Saturday as well. That'll do it here for week number 2 of the college football show at Beef Upfront. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please keep it locked here. Subscribe, like us, everything. Share us on socials, and we'll be back next week. Hard to believe, Joe. Already week 3 next week, but pretty exciting one. The Beef Upfront train will be heading to Penn State next weekend to do a live show, actually, for Penn State Villanova. So excited to do that next week. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk next week.
Oh my God.